Welcome, folks. We are here with the wonderful Andrea Kane. She is a New York Times bestselling author and a US Today bestselling author. Welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've written?
Oh, wow, what an opening question. Hi, everybody. First of all, well, first I wrote from when I was 3 years old. That's when I began writing, because otherwise we'll say that the books are way old and I must be old. So no, I started at three, which makes me about 35. So I started with historical romantic suspense because I
Mhm.
was really into the Regency period and everything then. But suspense always made its way in there. I could never have a book without some kind of a suspense plot. So that's why I did those. And actually, the first 14, which are all of the historical suspense ones, they have just been re released in ebook form. So all the people who either bent their copy out of shape and want it again or have never read them, there's access to them, which is great. And then I discovered the world of contemporary, and I never looked back because, it's funny when I go back to my historicals now, I say, quick, grab the cell phone. Oh, wait, there is no cell phone. So it's very hard to go back and forth. But I did about, I might say about six or seven, or maybe eight. I did a bunch of books before I got into the Forensic Instinct series. Once I started that, there was no turning back. It was special.
Yeah, I have a lot of your books, and these are just the ones that I have right now, and I love every one of them. But your Forensic Instincts books are just some of my favorites.
Thank
Um,
you.
I love the new one, but that team is just, it's wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about and what you were thinking of?
First of all, I always loved reading about like ensemble teams or a few, like a couple. And I did actually do a one with a duo, two FBI agents. But then it was bothering me. And that's when, now I'm not showing how old I am, but the original Leverage came on TV. And I watched the team and I thought, how cool. There's like four or five of them. They each have different talents. And it was a completely different kind of business and everything else. But the whole idea, as I grew to really love each character, I thought this is a really great thing for me because I love characterization. So that's how it started. And Casey
Mhm.
just came. I don't know why, she just did. I had this idea of a behaviorist. I'm really into psychological stuff. So
Yeah,
Casey came in there, and then everybody else followed suit.
I love Casey, but I really like Ryan.
I love Ryan.
So
I
can you
find
tell us?
myself quoting him. I'd say something like Ryan would say, yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about each member of your team, the core team, and what their strengths are?
Okay, well, after Casey, who's a behaviorist, we
Mhm.
have her core team initially were Mark Devereaux and Ryan
Yeah.
McKay. Mark is former FBI behavioral analysis unit, and just got tired of the whole uh, stick to the rules kind of a situation. And so when Casey had this kind of beginning and opening, he just joined right on. And Ryan, who's an MIT dropout but a genius, he was all on board because he's so brilliant with the computer and strategic planning and all that kind of stuff that it was like he had an
Yeah.
open book that he could just play with as opposed to following rules that he doesn't follow. Not good at following rules.
He
So
absolutely not.
that's who we started with that. And then by the first book, we had
Yeah.
Claire Cognizant in the book, and Patrick, he was with the FBI as well for like 25 or 30 years, but now he's kind of their head of security, and he makes sure they don't cross too far over the line into what you would call illegal from walking the line between illegal and legal.
I think of him as kind of the mom of the team. Yeah, I think you're going a little too far there. Let's move it back in.
Exactly. And then of course, we have Hero, our human scent evidence dog.
Yes.
He's so much fun.
Yeah. Oh, you froze up there for a sec.
You there?
Yep.
Good.
So, and you can't forget about Yoda.
Never. Yoda's a character on. Oh, I forgot Emma actually. Emma
Yeah.
joined on later too. She's a pistol. She's in a class unto herself. And yes, Yoda is Ryan's AI creation, but at this point, because all of the emotional aspects and everything else that Ryan has fed into him, he's kind of like a human being. And
Very
it's
much.
really cool to write him and to watch him having written him, because it's like a real person, even though he obviously is not. So he has the scientific side and he has the emotional side, and it's really cool.
He reminds me of like the old-timey butlers.
Yeah,
Very
yes,
much. Just the way he thinks and the things that he says. And yeah, he just really, it really adds a missing element to the team. I love Yoda.
I do too. And he's a great AI assistant as opposed to having a regular personal assistant, because Ryan's idea was he didn't want any baggage, he didn't want any emotional stuff. He wanted someone who could actually carry out their tasks and do them right and have a brain to be able to do them, which is what he created. He added the emotional parts later on because he kind of became a little more emotional later on.
Yes. It's interesting and so much fun to watch them grow in each book. I mean, you can pick up any book and read it, but to see their growth throughout the series is just so much fun.
That's what I
Um,
love.
it makes them really real people.
Exactly. All of
Um,
them.
yeah. And then they have their outside relationships, although occasionally those relationship partners get pulled in on cases. Um, so
And
like
there, we
Ryan,
can say it, there's an inside relationship that's developed that we didn't expect, but because they're day and night. And it just, that, I guess sometimes opposites attract,
I,
because, Claire is all about, auras and, believing in the intangible and everything else. And Ryan is all about, about the tree fell in the woods kind of thing. He's just, a scientific guy. So there was a lot of fighting going on before anything else developed. There's still a lot of fighting going on.
I mean, even Casey and Hutch, they had to learn
Yes.
to keep their business lives separate because they just couldn't mesh those.
No, because Hutch is FBI and he's very, very straight and narrow, because that's what all of my relationships that I made in the Bureau when I was working with them all these years, they are very much, they keep to the rules. They don't step out. This is not, the retired agents are a little bit more forthcoming, but they still don't reveal anything of import
Mhm.
that's in any way secret. So you have Hutch, who's all about that. And then you have Casey, who's leading a team that's all about not that. And then his feelings get mixed in. So it's kind of hard for him to stay completely on the straight and narrow. And it makes him crazy when he can't stay on the straight and narrow. So yeah,
Yeah.
they've had to come to terms.
Yeah. I always think it's funny when it's like the team starts talking and they're like, Hutch, you need to go.
Exactly.
Like,
He's
get
like,
out.
okay,
You're not
I'll
gonna like
hit the
this.
road now. Yeah.
So with them not being on the straight and narrow, though, they've made some odd relationships in the community too, with the police department and attorneys, and so those are hazardous at times, and you wonder where that's going to work or not work.
It's kind of fun to see them sort of going back and forth with the police, because the police are really pissed most of the time because they are not keeping to the rules, and also they usually win, which is
Yeah,
not, they don't want them to find the person first, they want to find the person first. So FI usually soothes ruffled feathers by giving them credit. It's kind of like they did it all, they don't, because they don't really care, they don't need that kind of glory, they have it but they don't need it, and they just want to solve the case and have everyone be healthy and happy. So that's what their goal is.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. But you also pull in family members as clients.
Yes.
And so that's always fun. And I loved when you pulled in Ryan's sister for the book.
Fiona's wonderful. She was in this book for a little while too, and I think she'll
Mhm.
kind of show up in a lot of books. It's just something about her that you really love. And she and Ryan, their relationship is so complex and different. So because there's four McKays, and it's we'll meet the other ones soon enough, but not yet in this book.
That's exciting.
And it's Fiona is just very special, and I think that when she came into the book, I loved watching the sparks between her and her brother, and then I loved watching the sparks between her and her brother, and his being a little bit peeved because then Claire and Fiona were becoming friends, which kind of was not inside his workouts. So I love dealing with characters. These characters are so emotive, and they change and they evolve. And when you have a whole series, you get to watch them change and evolve, or create them supposedly. Well, I'm convinced they create themselves.
I agree. And watching them come is so interesting, and to see them as people and to get to know them as people. One of the things I loved about Fiona is her Celtic jewelry line. And you actually made a Celtic jewelry line that you sell for that.
She has her own website, FionaMcKayJewelry.com.
And it's
And
beautiful, so visit.
it's we started out with the Celtic line, and then I worked. I should back up. In No Stone Unturned, when she was in, I worked with a goldsmith, and she and I were pretty much partnering in this kind of thing. So we've created Fiona together in terms of her jewelry business.
It's
So
beautiful.
we sort of used her skills and my abilities with people and put them together and got the right jewelry up there. And now we're sort of, if we ever have time, she and I are both so busy, but we're trying to come up with a new line, coming soon. So we keep trying to build. But everybody got really excited about it, and we were really excited too.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, and I visit there all the time, and I'm constantly sending links to my husband. I'm like, honey.
My birthday is soon.
So, okay, well, what else have you done? You were talking about learning from the jewelry designer to produce Fiona's character. So, what other types of employment have you had to learn a lot about to make your characters?
Oh, first of all, when I first wrote The Girl Who Disappeared Twice, which is the first in the series,
Mhm.
I literally lived at Quantico and FBI headquarters, learning everything from their acronyms, which are extensive, to
Yes.
everything that was allowable, not allowable. I learned about hostage negotiation. I actually got a chance to go on the actual site where they were conducting the exercises. So
Wow.
they were sort of pseudo holding, like there was a bus, a school bus that was being held hostage. There was a bank robbery that they were enacting as well. And what was interesting is I got to learn about things like throwaway phones, and they actually did it. Like they did it like it was real. Because I was so devastated, the school bus ended up they didn't handle it correctly, and it blew up, and the kids were all killed. I was devastated, but I mean it wasn't real kids. It was just a simulated. How will you handle this? And they're training the agents, and if they take a wrong step, unfortunately, something happens. I was in with the bank robberies for a while, and it was so funny because there's this little that's where I got R2D2 from with Ryan. There's a little kind of computerized machine that's operated to go in with its little hook thing and throw the throwaway phone in so that the
Hmm.
bad guy can have it and communicate with the hostage negotiator. But there's no human being that goes in and physically hands it to him, so they could not risk getting one of them killed. So I was standing outside while the little critter was getting itself ready, and it was all lined up next to me. And I went, wow, I don't know how this could be done. I really don't know. And he went, and the critter said, watch, we can pull it off. And I sort of jumped. I didn't realize there were two men in there. So there were that. And the other funny thing that happened was we were in the warehouse, and they were loading their pistols, and they were teaching me how to load a pistol, which I'd never held in my life. And they were showing me how you push it in, drop it down, push it in, drop it down. And here's all these important people all gathered around. And here's Andrea, who always opens her mouth. So all of a sudden I went, I get it. It's like a Pez dispenser. They all broke up laughing. I was afraid they'd get mad at me, but that's what it was. So that was that. And then between the FBI and I've talked to a great many police officers, especially retired ones who have amazing stories to share.
Hmm.
And I learn about them, and I deal with a lot of lawyers, and I've dealt with doctors, because there's specialists like that throughout the books. And I
Yeah.
like to I'm one of those perfectionists that need to be fully versed in everything I do. So I
Well,
feel
you
like
have
it
a
was
lot of details about so many different professions.
yes. And I try, it's because I talk to the people who do it.
Yeah.
And I've been very lucky. They've been very generous with their time. I mean, I sit there for hours and take notes and take notes and take notes. My computer's bursting with all the notes that I've had from all the books. But that I like learning about other fields. It's really kind of interesting. And then seeing them incorporated into how it's handled solving a crime, it's very interesting.
I think so too. Actually, okay, so At Any Cost, which was this was your last book.
Right before we struck dead.
And so this one was about um, a infused beer and it had CBD in it.
Yes.
And I thought that that was so amazing because I had never thought anything like that was even possible. And I read it, and not 6 months later, I saw a commercial for it. And I'm like, how does she do that?
It's not that big a secret. First of all, when I get on sites where filaments of ideas are going back and forth, like where people are talking about it, wouldn't it be cool if? And I
Yeah.
read all the different maybes, and nothing is really approved and nothing is really real yet. And I usually then extrapolate, and there I use my husband Brad a lot because he's great at that. I mean, he can say, "Why don't you do this and this?" And that would be so cool. So between his techno skills, and
Hmm.
because he helps with so much of Ryan, and between my own research and finding how fascinating it is, we end up creating it. And sometimes we just get really lucky. And it happens that my book comes out at the same time as that comes out. I was really lucky with that At Any Cost. Sometimes not. Sometimes, it'll be that comes out a little while before or a little while after. And people write me letters saying, "This isn't real. I never heard of this." And then 3 months later, they're like, "Never mind. We see this."
Yeah, it's completely amazing because I like so often I'm like, "Wow, or even a lot of the techno stuff with Ryan, I'm constantly like, okay, is this true? And then I'll look it up to find out more information and it's always accurate. Not always well known, but always accurate. And I'm like,
That's the
how
fun
do they
part.
stay on this?
That's the fun part, doing the not well known but accurate.
Yeah.
And the things that could be. And once I throw those kinds of ideas at it, Brad, he's all over it. He'll go, "Wouldn't it be interesting if Ryan and I?" But once I've done, then I'm typing notes because I know this is going to be a good thing. So yeah, I mean, it's real, but nobody usually has ever heard of it. There's some of them are obvious, but some of them are very, very sophisticated and not exactly well known. And I enjoy watching people learn it.
So your newest book that we're here to talk about today is Struck Dead.
Yes.
And I have finished reading it. So if I get a little too close to a plot point, just tell me to shush. So can you tell us a little bit about Struck Dead and the plot?
First of all, I love that cover. It's one of my favorite covers. When the artist did it, I was just like, "That's so perfect." Because it's kind of a crime within a crime. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
a concurrent situation going on, both of which involve the same person. Um, the onset, Christopher Hillington, who's a multimillionaire businessman, is found dead in his apartment with his head bashed in. And what's really riveting to me about that is that Casey gets a phone call from the attorney who's working with him on his other crime, which I'll get to in a minute. And she's saying, "Please come down right now. You've got to meet me on the Upper East Side at his apartment." And Casey is thinking, this woman never flips out. Why is she so overwrought? And she can't resist. So she goes, recognizing that she's probably walking into a crime scene and shouldn't be doing that. Well, it was some crime scene because she walked in, and not only was he dead on the floor, but he had written two words on his desk with blood, and it said Casey Woods.
Yes.
So there was the onset of the big murder. And then at the same time, the reason his defense attorney is handling him is because he's the prime suspect in a hit and run in which the driver was actually murdered or killed.
Mm-hmm.
So he's on the verge of manslaughter charges, and now he's dead. So are they related? Are they not related? It was very interesting because there are two definitive things that actually come together. And if my reader is watching this, I thank you very much. I did thank her when I sent her last email. She asked me a question about At Any Cost, about a character that she thought was a loose thread. And she said, "I have a feeling you're going to be bringing this person back." And I said, "Surprise, you're absolutely right." And she's the only one that guessed that, which I really thought that was terrific. And yes, that person is back and very important in this book.
It was really interesting. I know that through the first, I don't know, third of the book, it was just constant. My head was like bombarding me with questions. And so I frequently write my reviews about 30% of the way through because I don't want to give away too many details. And then I look at it at the end and try and make sure that I didn't give away anything that needed to, stay quiet or, but like I couldn't do it. I kept like I had way too many questions. I'm like, I can't like frame this. I'm like, because what if, what if that's so yeah, it was a constant lot of questions.
That's
And
a lovely compliment. Thank you.
I actually wondered more if Casey was walking into a trap.
I
To
spent a
walk
lot
into
of
that
time
crime
on
scene.
that too.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what was going to happen at that point. I just knew that that was going to happen. And then, of course, the police were more than happy to jump in and think of her as a suspect. I mean, they
Yeah.
were delighted. She didn't touch anything. There was, the crime scene was left completely untouched. She went back to forensic instincts and they were all analyzing it because she never met this man. She didn't know this man. She'd never heard of him. Oh, she'd heard of him by business channels, but she'd never had anything to do with him. And she even called Hutch and said, "Do we know this person?" And he said, "No, except through newspapers." So they were really stuck. And all of FI had to get together and try to figure out what the correlation was. And of course, before they got too much into that, the police showed up. Why is this, besides all the other pictures, why do we see your name written in blood on this desk?
Well,
She had
and
to
it
handle that.
exactly. And it was difficult because it made Casey kind of she couldn't be as hands-on as she typically was because she had
Yes,
to be much more careful about how much she was seen throughout the investigation.
that's
Um,
exactly right.
because, she couldn't implicate herself accidentally.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So it was tough.
Yeah. It
I
made the
seem to
team.
write myself into those kinds of situations all the time. I always think I'm going to make this book a little more simple, a little less complex. Never happens. I'm just not capable of writing a simple book. I don't know why.
Well, it helps because I mean, I grab them as soon as they come off the shelves. And I need my print copies and I need Kindle copies because I need to be able to have that wherever I'm going. And I always, if technology takes over and wipes us all out, I need my print books.
I understand. I do the same thing.
Yeah,
My library is exploding. So
I can imagine. So you've written a lot of different kinds of books, and we've talked about several of them, but what has been your favorite thing to write?
it's tough because, I mean, first of all, as long as there's psychological thriller components, I'm happy. But
Yeah.
usually, as corny as this sounds, and I've always said this, so everybody probably thinks, oh, she's just saying that, but it's true. The book that I'm writing is my most favorite and my least favorite. I find every flaw as I'm writing it. I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't believe you did this. And then on the other hand, I'll say to me, oh, this is pretty good. I really like the way this is unraveling. And I can't ever pick because I would say to you, like the one I'm just starting now is my favorite because I'm really enjoying the beginnings of it. But when I was writing Struck Dead, that was all encompassing and that was my favorite and my least favorite book because I kept finding the flaws.
Mhm.
So, my books go back and forth between me and my editor and my copy editor and my family, and everybody reads and rereads. And the most frustrating part is when no one catches one thing. I'm thinking 40 of us read this and no one saw this. It is ridiculous. So I usually get a chance when I get the galleys to go back and fix it. But I'm a very hard perfectionist. It's hard to be with me and to work with me when I'm writing a book.
Well, it shows in your books because I mean, honestly, even when we get galleys, they're very rarely errors. I very rarely find anything. So, I mean, your perfectionism is really helpful.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And just FYI, I have been reading your books since before we knew each other. So, I had picked up your historicals and have been reading them since you released those.
Oh, so you were also 3 years old.
Crazy stuff for a 3-year-old to be reading, but hey, yeah. So You mentioned a little bit about re-releasing your ebooks. And can you tell us a little bit about that and maybe a timeline? Do you have some more information so that we know what to look for?
Well, the historical ebooks were all just released. I tried to post it. I don't know how my post. I'm so bad when I try to post things on Facebook. I get little boxes that don't show it right. I really tried, but we those were just recently released, like in the last couple of months.
Oh,
And
okay.
we're now working on a lot of audio renewals and things like that because audio is really popular now, and a lot of my readers want to listen while they're driving or while they're on a plane or whatever it is they're doing. They want to
Mhm.
listen. So those are very popular, and we've just started re-releasing and releasing a lot of audio. So we're in the process of what's, in the current stage of some of them are now released, some of them are going to be released. So that should be happening all over the next few months.
Excellent. We'll make sure to leave some links to that in the show notes. I am very excited. So you mentioned that you're working on a new book, Forensic Instincts.
Always. I miss, I finish and I need a vacation so badly, but there's usually something niggling at me, and I have to at least put the idea down. I might not be able to spend, immediate months doing it, but I usually spend a bunch of months doing some research, uh, fleshing out characters, and then I'll start usually writing a couple of chapters. And if I need a break at that point, I will take it. But at least I have the whole idea down, and it will change. It's like moving buoys. As I move, they move, and you keep falling in the water because you have to change the direction it's going in.
Yeah.
Characters usually decide that, but I don't think I can ever not write. I mean, it's sort of a bizarre. I can take time and not write, especially
Right.
because I have a 6-year-old granddaughter who takes up a lot of my time. But other than that, I really most of the time are either writing or I'm immersed in research or I'm talking to different people. There's usually something going on that's book related.
Mhm. So what is the most interesting place or profession or instance that you've had that like really brings back a memory for you?
I think most of the FBI things I just told you because that was my initial step in. I had no exposure to the FBI before then, and
I
once
can't
I
even,
had it, they were just so wonderful and kind.
yeah.
And I mean, I remember here's one specific example that was so meaningful. I did a book signing at the Marine Corps base, so because that's literally adjacent to Quantico, it's right near each
Mhm.
other. So I did a signing there. And first of all, the Marines are so respectful and wonderful. I mean, they're such special people. So I was signing all these books. Now, I had worked with a guy, an FBI agent, who had said to me that I really want to try to be there because I would love to be there for the signing. Well, it turned out that because he was redeployed in his other capacity, and he was back in Afghanistan, and his wife came. She was an agent as well, but obviously he couldn't be there. I was in the middle of signing all these books, and his wife walked over to me and she handed me a phone and said, "Here, someone wants to talk to you." Well, I got
Aw.
on the phone and literally hearing like bombs flying around. He was on the phone saying, "Hi, I just wanted to wish you all the best." I literally started to cry. I mean, what an amazing human being.
Yeah, that's
There are
amazing.
people like that out there.
And you've been lucky. You really have gotten to meet
Yes,
some wonderful people.
they were wonderful and they still are.
Yeah, that is so amazing. So tell our listeners where they can find you. And then I know you are busy, so I will let you go for the day.
Well, first of all, I'm AndreaKane.com. You can
Mhm.
find all the links to all my, you can read excerpts, you can link to buying sites, you can do anything you want to do. You can read about all the previous books, you can concentrate on a special category, contemporary or historical. It's all kind of concisely put so that way you don't have to worry about which book you missed or which book goes with which book. So that's the best place to go. Now I definitely have Facebook and Twitter accounts and Instagram accounts and all that stuff. I never remember the links, and I never, which is why I have you because you're wonderful. And I try my best, but I'm such a bad poster because I always think everything I'm saying is trite. I think to myself, what could I say that's exciting today? And I can't think of anything. Like here I am drudging it up over a cup of coffee, trying to come up with chapter one, and all I see is a blinking cursor. Yeah. So
Here's what
it's
I'm looking
tough.
at.
Exactly. So that's where everybody can find me. And the best place is always to go to my site because that has the links to everything. And you can go from there to look at me on social media and anything else you want to look at. It's all linked in there.
Perfect. I will make sure all of your links are in the show notes so that everybody can find you and just click really easily to find you and your newest books.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we will talk very soon.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
All
Bye
right. You have
bye.